of entry grades to teaching colleges. This story is extensive on page 6 and 7. Below there, it matters the corridors of justice, if you may, how Justice Chitembwe dug pit that buried plum career. So you unfit for office, that is what the tribunal that was investigating and looking into the matter of Justice Chitembwe said tribunal finds the conduct of judge wanting, recommends he be kicked out of office for, among others, discussing cases with litigants. So it matters numbers there. We do have 13 years. This is the time that Chitembwe served as a High Court judge, during which he was suspended twice for improper conduct but was cleared. And 10 days that a judge has to appeal findings at the Supreme Court that can give him back his job. This is according to the Constitution. Atop this particular page of the front page of the Standard, matters politics. Ruto goes for heart and soul of Raila Party. This was one particular trending story yesterday, where ODM members of parliament and one senator visited President William Ruto in State House, and it's quite stirred matters politics even in the ODM, and we'll be taking a look at that. Is the orange getting bitter? That is one of the main questions this particular morning. And a developing story in Turkey, rains stalled rescue efforts in Turkey. That is on page 25. And on the right side of the Standard, you do have matters. City Express rakes in 2 billion Kenyan shillings in less than a year. That is on page 10. And also breakup after CRB listing causes banker to lose job. Real quick, let's take a look at matters, the front page of the Standard, now extensive on page 5. Matters education, basically. Teacher shortage, poor facilities pose headache for schools, says report. So underfunding and teacher shortage hamper delivery of quality education. Shortage of infrastructure, a recipe for privatization and commercialization, says report. And on matters page 4, the matters Chitembwe not fit to hold judge office. The tribunal says the decision brought to an end Justice Chitembwe's 13-year tenure in the judiciary. Ruto will wait 10 days before gazetting the official sacking of the judge and his removal from the bench. One particular story we will be following up for you and see what will be transpiring in the 10 days and who might replace Chitembwe and how this particular process will go and the legalities of all that. And away from that, still on matters education on page 6, trimming TSC's powers among tough education sector proposals. So reforms team propose TSC's role to be limited to recruiting and promoting teachers. A team also supports mergers of universities and strengthening of mid-level colleges. From that, let's get into some matters on page 8 now that will form the meat of our conversation this particular morning. Matters tax, and we'll be taking a look at, is the taxman, that is Kere, is he up to the task on the ambitious plan that President William Ruto has to raise billions of Kenyan shillings, even as we wait for the financial year to actually begin for the 2023-2024 come this particular June. So tax matters are private. Please stop discussing them in public. But then we'll be discussing that today, right in public, and trying to see is this purely politics, or is there actually a good faith in matters trying to have a report on matters tax waivers, although from January 2018 as Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah wants. So I'll be diving into that particular matters. Matters politics, Ruto steps up charm offensive in Nyanza, pardon me, and we'll be getting into that. Real quick, away from Standard, let's get into the Daily Nation this particular morning, and the front page matters bold. There is the corridors of justice, the rogue judge Chitembwe's face plastered over big on the Daily Nation. You can see the verdict. Even for a judge who shot to global infamy in 2017 when he was awarded the Golden Bludgeon for the worst judgment in the world, Justice Said Juma Chitembwe still had everything going for him, even making an unsuccessful bid for a seat at the Supreme Court. Now, a tribunal formed to investigate the suspended High Court judge has recommended his sacking for engaging in conduct and becoming of a judge, and it all started after a falling out with former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko. Just what did Sonko's damning dossier contain? That particular story is extensive on page 10, and you can take a look at that story on page 10 of your Daily Nation. Real quick, before you go to the People Daily, let us take a look at page 6 and 7 on matters how Kenya Kwanza went on a spending spree after following that particular conundrum of how they came into power saying that matters empty coffers, but then splurged on luxuries. So the Daily Nation has outlined the approvals granted in supplementary budget for financial year 2022-2023 that was released by the National Treasury yesterday. And you can take a look at that particular, the numbers there, the winners and the losers. So we do have the programs from Matters State House Affairs. I can't read all of them right now, but then you can take a look at that on page 6. From State House Affairs all the way to the National Social Safety Net, all those particular numbers, and you can crunch them. So 264 million Kenyan shillings, this is the amount of money that was wired to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagwa's office to quote-unquote implement urgent planned activities on the recurrent side, according to a mini budget document. So in pursuit of austerity measures, President Ruto's administration plans to cut spending on development projects but raise recurrent spending. So it will be a wait and see to see how by the end of June this particular year how things will be shaping up, the whole recurrent expenditure and the ambitious plans by the president to cut on matters borrowing. And still on matters money, Ruto office gets 8 billion Kenyan shillings in supplementary budget. Still on page 7, right there you can see executive office of the president has been given a 36.2% raise. Right, and still on matters corridors of justice, you can take a look at that story that I was telling you of Chitembwe. Tribunal finds Chitembwe guilty of gross misconduct. And on page 12, one particular story that we'll be taking a look at also, questionable. Auditor General says residents of various counties may not be getting value for their money. So counties fail to provide invoices, receipts, and other forms of documentation to support expenditure. So the big question there is, where's the money? Auditor queries use of 25 billion Kenyan shillings in 6 counties. This even as the county bosses, the county governors are asking the National Treasury to give them an allocation of their money so that they can actually begin their duties. And even as MPs still also want the share of the CDF. So it is going to be a wait and see for the National Treasury how everything will be panning out. Before we exit this particular Daily Nation, matters the back page of the Daily Nation. And I'll be getting into matters sports, in the world of sports just a little bit. Senate National Assembly differ on PSC powers role. That is on the back page of your Daily Nation this beautiful Wednesday morning. So they want ruling that senators should have been involved in a formulation of law quashed. And it says, this is a quote by lawyer Paul Muite, which says the Court of Appeal erred in failing to interrogate whether the Parliamentary Service Act as enacted was unconstitutional, right? And on matters sports, Manchester United boss Ten Hag wary of manager Les Leeds. That is on page 35. And back home, Gor to unleash sizzling scorer Omala on Tusker. So it gives you today's particular fixtures. You can take a look at them. Kariobangi Sharks will be playing Zoya Sugar, Bandari Kakamega Homeboys. Quite a packed FKF league today. And away from matters standard, you can do have the People Daily this particular morning. Let me see if I can have it real quick right here. And the front page of the People Daily this beautiful morning will be having that on your screens just about now. The State House visit rocks Raila party. So are MPs changing loyalties? ODM hits out at legislators hosted by President William Ruto, adding anxiety in opposition, which has been holding rallies calling on President to step down. Azimio has called for internal assessment talks. You can take a look at that story on page 6. And on the right side of the People Daily, as you can see, emergency declared as over 5,000 die in Turkey. It is an absolute disaster, President Erdogan announces after a series of deadly earthquakes. Remember, this is a developing story and we'll be unfolding that for you. And it is quite, mourn and remember and pay our condolences to the bereaved families and to the nation of Turkey and the entire world. Below that it says blended family, the dangers to outlook for. You can take a look at that story on page 20. Despite good intentions, such unions are tricky for partners, right? And that even as we do wait a week away from Valentine's, right? On matters health, and this is one particular story even yesterday, the clinicians and the doctors, saying that a looming doctors strike, basically Kenya Kwanza Hospital to hold trials for new cancer drug. You can take a look at that story on page 3 of the People Daily. Kenya Kwanza Hospital to hold trials for new cancer drug treatment seeks to block activity of gene mutation responsible for the disease in affected patients. Right. Kenya University developed technology to boost infant vaccination rates. And still on matters People Daily, matters education now, on page 5 says education sector fails key test. So the 3 teachers unions decry hasty rollout of CBC and the funding of schools and a shortage of tutors. So in a nutshell, real quick before we get into the developing stories this particular morning, the study was conducted by November and December last year, targeting 5 counties: Kisumu, Kakamega, Uasin Gishu, Nairobi, and Nakuru. It was revealed that the government capitation per learner has not been revised over the years, yet inflation and the cost of living have risen. And finally, the study says privatization of education includes low-fee private schools, alternative provision of basic education and training, that is update, community schools, and private schools. You can take a look at that story on page 5 and all those particular dailies, People Daily, Daily Nation, and The Standard. Now to what is trending and what is the highlights of the news this particular morning. We do start with matters health. So as the debate regarding the frustrations faced by the healthcare workers in the country gains momentum, a section of workers from the Kenya National Union of Nurses and the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers has threatened to strike next week if the government does nothing to heal the country's ailing health sector. Elizabeth Atieno now reports.
Esther Kaindi is a nurse at one of the public health facilities in Kiambu County. She has today decided to break her silence on the real situation on the ground and says enough is enough.
I'm just standing here to say that it isn't fair at all to work alone in a ward whereby tunasema kama wauguzi there is no procedure for one nurse, lakini tumekuwa tukifanya hivyo. I do not know whether we are offering services or we are bewitching patients. It is not right. Hata tukienda kwa WHO protocols, it is not right. Nitasema ya kwamba tumechoka, na kusema ukweli vile union yetu inasema by Wednesday punda amechoka.
Kenya has in the recent past lost 7 medical doctors due to depression brought about unemployment. As of now, 1 doctor in Kenya is tasked with serving 17,000 patients, contrary to WHO's recommendation of 23 doctors to serve 10,000 patients.
Na kitu ya kustabisha sana ni ya kwamba tangu niandikwe hadi wa leo mambo inaenda ikiendelea na kuwa mbaya. Hivyo ni kwa sababu gani? Nilishawahi fanya kazi maternity ward na tulikuwa 54 midwives. Sasa enda maternity, utakuta nurses 3. Mmoja labor ward, mwingine antenatal ward, mwingine postnatal ward. Huyo kwa postnatal ward anapaswa kushughulikia mgonjwa ambaye ametoka theater pengine, ama mama amejifungua njia ya kawaida. Anapaswa kupindua yule mama, aidha kwa sababu mama hawezi kujipindua. Hata nisiseme tu maternity, general ward unapaswa kupindua mgonjwa after every 2 hours. Ninaenda nyumbani leo kwa kusummarize, nisiongee sana, nikiwa nimeumia mgongo kwa sababu ya kazi ile ambayo nimepeana for the 36 years I have worked now.
Are getting depressed. In the last 2 years, we have buried 4 doctors. So you can imagine if you are burying people because of stress, burnout, and nobody is taking it seriously.
Afya inapo fail ama mtu anapokufa, ile mfanyikazi anakuwa blamed. So wale ndio hawakuji kazi, wanaiba madawa. So pande hii wagonjwa na jamaa wao wanakulaumu, pande hii wale wenye wanafaa kulaumiwa pia wanakulaumu. So hiyo stress imetusumbua sana.
The shocking thing is that as many public healthcare workers grapple with burnout due to lack of enough manpower, over 4,000 trained doctors in the country are still jobless.
Unaenda kwa ward, unakuta muuguzi wa umri wa makamu kama mimi. Nimechoka, nina njaa, maana hata lunch siendi kwa sababu sina wa kuacha. Mgonjwa akija aniongeleshe, naye awe akona zake, ninaweza kumuongelesha na zangu akasirike.
Na the situation is so dire. Doctors are feeling frustrated, and some of them are even committing suicide. Very young doctors, we're losing very young people.
It is a serious issue. We are taking it very seriously. We have seen that there's a deficiency, like the whole of this county. I think I was being told in the morning that we need to have about 50 doctors. Yet we only have 6 and working, and 14 are on study leave.
Wiki ijayo kama hawatakuwa wametupatia mwelekeo, mimi nitawaongoza hawa watu na tutaandamana hadi kwa Wizara ya Afya na kwa Council of Governors hadi watuambie hawa watu wanaelekea wapi, kwa sababu tuko na katiba ambayo imetuonyesha ni jinsi gani tunaweza tukaulizia haya.
Lack of medical equipment is still a problem in a number of health facilities in the country, with Health CS Susan Nakumicha saying the situation is being managed. It is alleged that some county governments have withdrawn the services of the National Hospital Insurance Fund, exposing healthcare workers to burdens of incurring huge medical bills, which they have to cater for from their pockets.
Hereby petition His Excellency the Governor and the entire Kiambu administration as follows. 1. That to make sure our remittances to NHIF, as reflected in our payslips, are paid up immediately to NHIF. 2. To reimburse all county employees who have suffered out-of-pocket payments in the various facilities.
Delayed salaries, poor working environment, overworking and lack of promotions are some of the main challenges underscored by the healthcare workers, who are calling for government's intervention before a section of workers from the Kenya National Union of Nurses and Kenya National Union of Clinical Officers commence the strike scheduled for next week. Elizabeth Atieno, TV 47.
And from matters health, as more and more students are being enrolled in secondary schools for their Form 1 studies, some students have received offers from multiple schools are faced with the fear of not being able to join the preferred schools. Now, despite this, there's still hope for students from low-income families. They are receiving financial support from well-wishers as well as county governments. Chichi Josephine has more on that.
William Otieno, a bright student who scored 377 marks at Lukonyi Primary School in Busia County, is facing uncertainty about his future despite his academic achievements.
Niliitwa Goro Sari High School na my mama ana uwezo wa kunipeleka huko, so nilikuwa naomba tu if anyone willing angenisaidia tu kusoma na kupursue my dream.
He fears that his dream of becoming a doctor may not be fulfilled due to financial constraints faced by his mother in paying for his school fees.
Alipata 377 na akaitwa Goro Sari, lakini sijawezeshwa kupata hiyo pesa kwa sababu hata niko na watoto wengine. David ni fourth kwa hii nyumba.
In a similar situation, Daniel Lumumba from Busia County is also facing the prospect of not being able to pursue his education. He, like many other children in the area, lacks the financial means to attend to secondary school due to poverty.
Sina mbele ama nyumba, naomba kwa hisani ya Mwenyezi Mungu, mtu yeyote anaweza kunisaidia orene organization tashukuru.
In Kakamega County, Lurambi Member of Parliament Titus Kamala has said that he is preparing a bill to ensure that teachers are promoted.
Naenda kumenyana na kitu inaitwa job group. It's a monster ambayo imewekwa mwalimu anakaa kwa kiwango moja mpaka retirement. Tunaenda kung'oa hiyo kitu, kuhakikisha we liberate our teachers, wale ambao wana act indefinitely wako promoted na wapate pesa yao, kuwe na heshima katika kazi ya walimu.
In a separate development, the Director General of the Frederick Waititu Foundation has called on county governments to increase the allocation of ward funds from 2 million to 4 million shillings. He emphasized the importance of education and encouraged parents to send their children to school with the goal of achieving 100% transition from primary to secondary education.
Nimeenda pale leo asubuhi, nimepata watu ambao wali apply bursary ni wanafunzi 2,000. Bursary ambayo pesa ambayo tunapewa ni 2,000,000. Kama hauna mambo mengine ya kupanga, wewe unakwama. Because kila mtu ambaye anakuja ku apply bursary ana school fees.
In Narok County, Ephraim Kamwecho Nyambura, who got 384 marks, is now stuck at home struggling to get money for fees and other requirements to join Kagumo High School in Nyeri County.
Nisomea Elointepesi Primary School na akapata hiyo grade ya 384, lakini sijafaulu kupata pesa ya kumpeleka shule.
My mom is not able to pay for my fees, so just asking some well wishers to support me.
In a positive turn of events, Keyo South was filled with celebrations after the local Member of Parliament Gideon Kimayo stepped forward to pay the fees for over 2,000 students joining secondary school.
In each school, we are doing an average ya wanafunzi 80, kuonyesha kwamba mheshimiwa atakuwa anawalipia wanafunzi zaidi ya 2,000 kwa hii mwaka ya form 1, na ataendelea kufanya hivyo wanapoingia form 2, form 3 mpaka wamalize form 4.
25 secondary schools benefited in the area as parents expressed their joy.
Na mimi nimefurahi sana, hata roho yangu iko kweli kabisa.
In Kiambu County, parents lauded an increase in bursary allocation at a time when most of them have been struggling to pay school fees owing to harsh economic times. The parents received 8,000 shillings each that the area CDF kitty has set aside for every child, an amount that has increased from the previous 2,500 shillings.
Hiyo ametupea 8,000. Itatusaidia juu mtoto hiyo ingine tutagawa mara 2, ndio tuende tukilipa tukifika second term hakuna mtu atakuwa na deni.
Meanwhile, 6 needy students drawn from various wards within Murang'a County have benefited with full scholarship courtesy of a local water company. The learners who cleared their KCPE last year have been awarded with scholarships by Murang'a Water and Sanitation Company Muwasco and are now ready to join secondary schools where they were enrolled.
Nimeleta mtoto Lincoln Kirori na tumefurahia Muwasco vile wametutendea, wametufanyia mazuri hata hatuwezi sahau.
We have a budget of 1,000,000 shillings that will take care of students in secondary and tertiary level.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
Now, technology has been a driving force in the growth of Kenya's economy. In fact, Kenya has been termed as a regional ICT hub of East Africa as it ranks the third most innovative economy in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the 2021 Global Innovation Index. But as much as technology plays a critical role in the day-to-day life in Kenya, a number of people have fallen victim to it. And as Sharon Baranga reports, cyberbullying and harassment, especially on the female gender, has gained ground in Kenya.
Social media has become a way of life for a majority of people in the world. They are platforms that have literally shrunk the world into a global village where people interact, share their personal lives, promote their businesses, or champion for different causes. On the flip side, it has been the cause of anguish for some people who have fallen victim to cyberbullying and harassment. In Kenya, a number of young women have had nasty experiences with cyberbullying. One of them is Anastasia Murugi, a student at the University of Embu.
One of my friends gave me a dare. Post this video in your TikTok account, then I'll believe that you are that brave person and you fear nothing. And I did it. At first, I wanted to prove that I'm brave, but later, what I received, I confirmed that I'm not so brave.
Anastasia found herself on the spot.
I posted wearing I was dancing in a hoodie short, and most people were not used to see me in hoodie shorts. And they were, why are you posting this? Are you not the girl we know in church? Are you not the choir leader we know in church? Yeah, that's how it was like. People started calling me hypocrite, and so I felt bad. At first, it turned me to be a fearful person, that I stayed anxious.
The second-year university student opted to delete her social media platforms. Miles away from Embu, we meet Lensa Atieno, another victim of cyberbullying from Western Kenya in Kisumu County. Lensa, a student at Sigalagala Polytechnic, was betrayed by her ex-boyfriend who decided to post her nude pictures on the internet after they parted ways.
I was receiving calls, watu wananiuliza kwani what's happening, unajiuza ama ni nini, hizi ni zako ama ni mtu amefanya kitu. So nilikuwa naipata ngumu kuji-explain. Hadi alikuwa ananibody shame kwa Facebook. Nikakuja kumjua after alini text inbox, akaniambia utajua ujui. I have to do everything, kukustress, like ni lower self esteem, ni do everything. Hivyo. Ndo nilikamkujua hivyo, nikaamua ni delete kila kitu. Nikadelete hadi account yangu ya YouTube, Instagram and everything. Juu sasa watu waliona, kuna wenye hadi walikuwa wananitext.
Even after getting rid of her social media accounts, Lensa still struggled with the effects of being cyberbullied.
Alafu respect pia ilienda ikapotea. Hakuna mse anakurespect because
I lost respect and I was stressed. I had peace of mind when I deleted my social media platforms.
Just stressed.
George Omamo, a family therapist, says there are steps which a victim of cyberbullying can take to protect themselves from online or get justice in Kenya.
Cyberbullying is part of that serious abuse, and the most targeted group are young ladies.
Before I had been cyberbullied, I was extra confident. But currently, after I was cyberbullied, I slowed my confidence.
Somebody has attacked you. What do you do? First option is to bar him completely from your wall. That one you can. Second option is to report the person, because Facebook gives you that platform to report. All right? And third, if it's a person within your locality, like for example, Kenya, if you can prove evidence that so-and-so is following you up, and you have evidence, then you can prosecute such a, because there is what we call stalking, and whereby somebody keeps on following you wherever you are, your photos, and commenting bad things, knowing where you're going, and you can take legal action on such, especially if they are within your sphere.
The Communications Authority, the regulator of Kenya's communications industry, monitors Kenya's cyberspace with the objective to assist in detecting and preventing cybercrimes. Those include cyberbullying and harassment through social media and online platforms, fraud, ransomware and hacking, and the spread of fake political news and defamatory propaganda on the internet. Sharon Baranga, TV47.
And to the corridors of justice, the tribunal appointed to inquire into the conduct of Justice Said Juma Chitembwe has recommended his removal from office over gross misconduct. Chitembwe was being investigated over misuse of office and corruption, as Andrew Kilemi now tells us.
The tribunal was appointed through Gazette notice.
A 12-member tribunal led by Lady Justice Mombe Ngoge has recommended the removal from office of Judge of the High Court Juma Said Chitembwe over gross misconduct.
The tribunal finds that the contravention of Articles 10, 75 and 232 of the Constitution and Regulations 9, 19, 20 and 21 of the Code of Conduct and Ethics by the judge amounted to gross misconduct or misbehavior.
The tribunal, which was formed by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, found that Chitembwe had breached constitution while discharging his duties as a judge of the High Court. Among allegations against Chitembwe is lack of impartiality, lack of integrity and accountability, corruption practices, subversion of justice through commenting on matters pending in court, lack of professionalism, and non-disclosure of conflict of interest contrary to Article 75 of the Constitution.
And having considered all the evidence and following the tribunal's findings that allegations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 have been proved, we unanimously find that the judge's conduct was in breach of the Judicial Service Code of Conduct and Ethics. We therefore recommend to Your Excellency that the Honorable Mr. Justice Said Juma Chitembwe be removed from the office of Judge of the High Court.
President William Ruto, while receiving the findings of the tribunal, said the Constitution remains the guiding principle for all who have been given the responsibility to serve Kenyans.
For us to be a country built on the firm foundation of the rule of law, we must always keep to that narrow path of the rule of law and avoid extra-constitutional, extra-legal means of dealing with one another. It points clearly and squarely that if any arm of government, including the hallowed judiciary, go beyond the law, go beyond the Constitution, there is a mechanism for necessary corrective measures that can be done.
The embattled judge, however, according to Article 168, Clause 8 of the Constitution, has 10 days to appeal the decision of the tribunal should he be aggrieved by its findings. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Now, divisions have rocked the Orange Democratic Movement Party after a section of the party MPs met President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi. The team led by Kisumu Senator Tom Ojenda, however, drew condemnation from the Orange Party, which distanced itself from the visit, accusing the MPs of undermining the party. State House termed the meeting as a follow-up to President Ruto's visit to Nyanza last month.
A meeting between President William Ruto and a section of ODM MPs at State House, Nairobi, has left the Orange Party divided after the party distanced itself from the visit, with the party reading the riot act to the MPs for undermining party leader Raila Odinga and the party.
We cannot have a party that today the party leader is saying this and the rank and file of party membership is saying the opposite. The party leader is saying this, the chairman is saying that. Personally, if I decide to now go against what the party leader is saying, I would resign my position first.
So I will not really blame them, but I think, there is a saying that every act, anything you do, there are always consequences. I don't know how the consequences will look like because ODM as a party is a structured party.
According to State House, the meeting was a consultative one, following President William Ruto's visit to the Nyanza region last month. But to ODM, it was a revolt against Odinga, terming it an act of betrayal.
As a leadership of the party, we may need to start getting our acts together. There's something certainly that is going off the rail, either with the leadership of the party or the leadership of the House. Something needs to be done.
Perhaps in a move to show the party is still united, despite what amounted to a political coup, Odinga, in a statement on social media, said the party is stable after hosting Deputy Party Leader Ali Hassan Joho, who has been missing in Azimio rallies, and Party Director of Elections Yunet Mohamed, also not visible in the meetings, and Deputy Party Leader Wycliffe Oparanya. The party had earlier on in the day distanced itself and condemned the visit through ODM Director of Communications Philip Etale, who said, and I quote, "Some leaders have elected to undermine the leadership of the party and chosen to go against the will of the people who elected them to the positions that they hold." ODM further accuses State House of allegedly dishing handouts to the MPs with the aim of scuttling Azimio's anti-government agenda, with a statement saying, and I quote, "We knew the enemy will not sit pretty. They have started spending stolen money to hoodwink some of our leaders with the aim of trying to scuttle our activities." The visit, which has unsettled the party, causing fury among Odinga's diehard MPs, will be on the table when Azimio MPs meet for the Coalition Parliamentary Group meeting on Thursday this week at Stone Athi, where the MPs will be reprimanded. The MPs have, however, denied claims that they have ditched ODM. Apul Kamau, TV47.
And still in the same matters, nominated Member of Parliament John Mbadi, who has served as the chairman of the Orange Democratic Movement (ODM) party for 9 years, has announced his readiness to step down from his leadership role. This comes amid accusations from a faction of opposition leaders that Mbadi has been avoiding opposition rallies led by Azimio leader Raila Odinga. Flora Limoke with more.
In the wake of the recent Azimio coalition protest, several high-ranking politicians affiliated with the ODM party have been noticeably absent from the last 3 rallies organized by Raila Odinga in Nairobi's Kamukunji, Jacaranda Grounds and Kibra. The absence has raised questions about their stance on the ongoing political events and has sparked speculation about potential divisions within the party. Adding to the speculation, ODM party chairman John Mbadi has now announced his intention to resign from his leadership position. His absence from the recent rallies, combined with the decision to step down, has created further uncertainty within the party and has sparked discussions about potential changes in the party's leadership structure.
9 years is such a long period of time to serve as chairman. Change is also good. Let someone else come and chair the party. Yeah. You know, those are gossipers. Me, I don't deal with people who are idle, gossiping. Many of us have been around for this party for long.
The nominated legislator has been at loggerheads with a section of party members since the conclusion of the last general election, says he has done his bit as the ODM chair for the last 9 years. The former Suba North MP has cited the betraying the selection of leader of minority and divisions within the party as his main reason to call it quits.
That's why they took away minority leader from me. Since they took it away, see, I'm still alive. They can also take chairman, I'll still be there. And by the way, I want to repeat it for record. I want to leave this position.
This comes in the backdrop of a looming division within the ODM party following a section of elected legislators meeting with President William Ruto today. Some leaders opine that it is time the Azimio leaders moved on from the August 9th election, saying it informed their decision to give the Azimio rallies a wide berth.
There's something that is not going right. And that's something that is not going right. As a leadership of the party, we may need to start getting our acts together.
Also, the lawmaker has confirmed that he has informed the Azimio coalition leader Raila Odinga of his intention to resign from his role in the ODM party. He stated that it is now only a matter of time before he officially steps down, indicating that his departure from the party's leadership is imminent. Flora Limuki, TV47.
Now, the Kenyan government has announced that no Kenyan has been killed or is stuck under the rubble following 2 earthquakes that hit southern Turkey and northern Syria, killing at least 5,000 people. Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua says the Kenyan government will offer support to the Turkish government. Collins Lusweti with that story.
The 2 earthquakes hit southern Turkey and northern Syria on Monday, killing at least 5,000 people. The rescue teams have been going through the rubble to try and save more lives. The World Health Organization is now warning that death toll could rise to 20,000 because an earthquake hit the region in 1999 at a similar magnitude and killed at least 17,000 people. More than 6,000 buildings have been destroyed and nearly 25,000 rescue personnel have been deployed to search for survivors. American news channel CNN is reporting that at least 70 countries have offered aid for search and rescue operations. Kenya has today offered to assist Turkey through the supply of food and medical experts.
Na mimi nataka kuomba Wakenya wote ya kwamba wakati ndugu zetu, dada zetu wanaingia kwa shida, kazi yetu sio tu kuwaombea kwa mbali na kuwasalimia na kuangalia TV. Tunataka pia tuweze kuwasaidia. Sisi kama serikali tutajaribu tuweze kuwatumia majani, kahawa, pamoja pia na njugu, karanga na zingine ambazo wanaweza zitumia, vitu ambazo zinaweza kwenda kwa upesi sana na kutumiwa kwa upesi bila kuharibika. Na pia tuweze kuangalia kama tunaweza wasaidia pia na wale watafiti maalum, wale wana ujuzi wa kuweza kuwatafuta watu ambao wamekwama kule kwa mijengo ambayo imeporomoka. Kwa hivyo tutaangalia vile tuweza kuwasaidia, kwa sababu tuna watafiti, tuna wataalamu kamili katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, wa majeshi yetu na wengine waweze kwenda kule kuwasaidia.
This shows the cordiality of the friendly Kenya and your solidarity with Turkey in times of disaster.
Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua has also indicated no Kenyan has been killed or stuck under the rubbles.
Hatujapata ripoti yote kuhusu Mkenya yote ambaye ameweza kuumia ama kuhusika katika ama kuhusishwa katika swala hili, lakini tunasema kwamba tunataka Wakenya wote wajue kwamba si kama serikali tunawajali, na tuko na namba ambayo wanaweza piga simu wakiwa katika hali ya shida ya maporomoko hayo ama earthquake hii. Namba yenyewe ni ya kule Uturkia, ni namba 505 385 020 960.
Collins Lusweti, TV47, Nairobi.
Right, and that is one particular story we'll be following up on for all those particular developments, and we do send our condolences to the families in Turkey. Now, that particular story, we'll be getting into the conversation. Remember, I told you that we'll be getting into the discussion of matters, taxes, and our guests this particular morning have arrived. On my far left is Othiambo Akum, a public policy and fiscal decentralization specialist. Quite mouthful, that particular title. And Ahmed Kadar, a political analyst as well, and Wakili Elid Ngugi, a lawyer. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time. Your time is much appreciated. Karibuni sana.
Asante.
Before we get into the meat of our conversation this particular morning, matters tax, I want to get into matters politics a little bit. The whole ODM, the split. I think I can start with you, Ahmed Kadar, on this. What do you read into this?
You see,
the ODM chair for 9 years now, John Badi, says there's some sort of wrangles or miscommunication in the pack and the leadership of the party. So what does this read into the ODM party basically?
To be honest, from the look of things, ODM is in kind of shamble, and people, every election, after election, people normally try to fix themselves through power, one or the other. And as you can see, this shift in how ODM is managing the post-election, an election that they have lost, which most thought they will never, it was theirs to lose. But all I can say is that the ODM chairman is on his way out of ODM. If you can read his body language, if you can see the way he's handling himself. And because people now that are trying to position themselves either around Raila or outside Raila. And what happened yesterday, you have seen a member of parliament for Langata, Jalango, and some other ODM MPs visited the State House. The party came out, guns blazing, saying they never endorsed that. That already shows there is a division in the party. And you see, when you look at the handshake, this is compared to the handshake. Everybody think that, when Raila goes into a handshake or something like that, it has only benefited him. Now people are learning, politicians are learning and trying to get, to be independent of maybe the party leader and the party. Of course, it will have consequences, but I think those consequences maybe will all be felt 5 years from today. So it's by that time, politics, you say a day is long in politics. So all I can say is that ODM is in shambles, and they're really in a very, very tight situation.
Were there red alerts that maybe the party should have seen even after the elections?
Sorry?
Were there probably some red alerts or red signs and some signs that were visible way before? Are these things that are starting right now?
Yeah, there were signs that were there, that because you see, First of all, this is not a shock to ODM. What is a shock to ODM Azimio rather. But you see right now, Azimio has been reduced to ODM because we are not seeing Jubilee, we are not seeing other affiliated parties. Everybody has minded their business. It's because it took them 5 years, 5 months, sorry, about 5-6 months since the August election to handle the loss. And, as I said, maybe they were not prepared for this. Maybe they are the only ones who saw that they were not losing, because the way things were being handled at that time, everybody could tell, the Hustler Nation, the wave of the Hustler Nation was unstoppable. And compared to a government or a handshake coalition that was forcing things on its own, which many Kenyans were not happy with at the time. Yeah, it was coming, but it's only, as I can say, ODM and its leadership that didn't see this coming.
All right. I want us to get into matters legal with Wakili here, and some matters independence of the judiciary and all that. One trending story on all those particular dailies that we do have here. A tribunal wants High Court Judge Chitembwe fired, and it does have 10 days from now. What does this speak of the judiciary right now? Right now, in this particular age that we're in as Kenya?
The judiciary has been known to be independent, and we need to appreciate the independence of the different bodies of the government, legislature, executive, and now the executive. And so we have a procedure that has been set out on the removal of a judge, and I believe that's what has been followed. There was an appointment of this tribunal to look into the issue of Justice Chitembwe, and that does not in any way get in the way of the independence of judiciary, because the complaints were made through the proper channel, which was the JSC, Judicial Service Commission. And then the president appointed his own tribunal to actually have a report issued to the executive, which is the president. And so the judiciary remains independent.
So what happens now? Because we do, according to the Constitution, Chitembwe has the next 10 days to, put his case, basically. So what happens maybe after he's fired and all that, according to the Constitution?
Well, the Constitution doesn't speak much on that. It just, we have an act that refers to the removal and appointment of a judge, and so he has been found not to have actually conducted himself in a proper manner, and therefore, upon his giving his side of the story, then it will just end up being the removal, because there's already a committee that has actually proven that he did not conduct himself right.
And we believe now, even for other judges and people in the court and in the judiciary, this will be like a litmus test, even for the judiciary to, in the future. We don't really have such cases.
We've had such cases before. Mm-hmm. This is not a new case to us. Only that
in the future, we don't really have such cases.
We hope not to have such cases, because the standard set on the judicial officer's conduct is very high, that a judicial officer should live his life in a way that does not cause conflict in cases that they are dealing with, or a judicial officer should ensure that they limit their life expression, that you should be, just as the same way the body, the judiciary is independent, you as a judicial officer should ensure that you are independent, that we don't find you in kamukunjis, in just spending time around the people, and you're expected at the same time, the same people you're spending so much with time with are the same people who are coming before you for you to make decisions. And so that causes a conflict of interest. And what the story behind this judge, he conducted himself in a way that he was spending time with parties who later on were coming to him for him to make determinations and decisions for. And so from today henceforth, we expect that we will not, and we have not seen many cases of judges actually out in public. And I remember in a certain sitting where we were attending a funeral meeting for a senior colleague, and one of the Supreme Court judges was expressing himself and saying, because this particular colleague was his friend, and he was saying this was his first time he was speaking in public, away from the Supreme Court. And so you can see the standard they have set for themselves, that they should not involve themselves in the public life. They should live a very special life whereby they are not seen in the public.
Right. And it is one particular clarion call by the president to ensure an independent judiciary. Finally, before we actually get a short break, Othiambo, the whole matters NSSF, and a couple of weeks from now, Kenyan employees will have to increase their contribution to the National Security Fund, that is basically the NSSF, up to 10 times, as according to a ruling by the Court of Appeal. Matters, the whole public policy and all that, where does this leave employees and employers?
Well, that's a very dicey issue in the sense that it has not really gained acceptance across, the public sphere. There are those who are really concerned as to the fact that, one, the amount involved, including the fact that it's a tenfold increase from what ideally people used to pay in the form of those NSSF returns and things like that. So the concern is that why that much in the form of an increment? The belief would have been, or rather the most appropriate way of going about it, ideally would have been maybe incremental increases, because I've sat down with people who've made arguments against the same, and majority of the people are like, one, we are not even sure of what the monies that ideally have always been collected in terms of application, in terms of use, in terms of benefits that have been derived from such kind of contributions and things like that. Not so many people are sure how that goes. But now with the court, with the court ruling to the effect that the government can actually do that which it had proposed to do, then there is no other choice. I do see the fact that the government has been given the liberty to proceed with its earlier intentions, which was to increase this amount from, what was it, about 200 bob, or is it 400 bob?
From 200 shillings to 2,000? To
2,000 shillings. So the court has set the stage. And for the fact that the court has set the stage, then it is very likely that the government shall pick up on the same and mandate that the contributions are actually as high as proposed. With the figure of maybe the floor being now 2,000 Kenya shillings plus many more. So as things stand, unless the government develops cold feet and decides not to implement that which they had initially proposed, then that would be it. But the truth of the matter is that the legitimacy for continued, or for that hike as initially proposed, it has been gotten from the courts, because the courts have agreed with that proposal. The courts have actually made a pronouncement to the effect that the government can actually proceed and hike those contributions to the figure that has been proposed.
Right. Okay. And speak of matters courts, I'll be yes, getting into to discuss that with Ngugi for a bit, that particular letter by the FKE. But then, Kedar, what is your take on this matter? The whole NSSF, the new rates from 200 bob to 2,000. Where does this leave the common Mwananchi?
I think, first of all, the 2,000K is a bit on the extreme high, if you ask me. Because there are people who earn maybe their entire salary is less than 10K in a month. So if such a person, will he still contribute to 2,000? Or is the level, or is the increment depending on certain other factors? So I think we should consider everyone, much as it's good to save. But again, you see, there is the issue of mismanagement of the entire NSF thing. So as much as people are contributing to NSF, yes, people are willing to contribute, but how sure is their investment. That at the end of the day, even, you know, when you go to NSF and people, maybe a 60-year-old tired, want to go back to, get his NSF, dues and pension, whatever, it takes them, you know, ages. They even die before they get their dues. So all those things have to be put into consideration. I won't mind it being increased, but it should be increased in proportionate to people's earnings.
All right, and on that note, we take a short break. We'll be getting into that particular matter just a bit on the whole NSSF, the new rates with Ngugi, before we get into the meat of our conversation this particular morning, the whole matters tax and what does it, the ramifications it has on the micro, small and medium enterprises and other matters basically. You're watching Morning Cafe, we'll be right back.
Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako. Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma Pain Balm. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Kwa muonekano wao, hauwezi ukajua walichopitia. Kwa sura zao, wanaweza kukaa wameng'aa, lakini nyuma ya hao kuna historia na story. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea. Nami Elizabeth Mtuku.
Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
There can be success drivers of all types. The desire to have more money, to be your own boss, but there's one success driver that you cannot ignore. Love.
Niko napenda jewelry, so nikaona niingilie kuziundaga.
The love for one's craft, the love that drives these entrepreneurs to change their industries.
We felt the need to regulate this industry, adding the value of professionalism and issuing them with certificates.
And we, here on The Grind, love to feature these businesses every Monday at 8:30 p.m.
Methali ya leo. Tamu yataka milele, ikiisha na wakati ungali mbele huwa mwele kwa tamu ulioonja mbele.
Maana ya neno mwele ni mgonjwa.
Maana yake, kitu ambacho ni kitamu hutaka kuwepo milele, kwani kikiisha mtu akiwa bado anakitamani, mtu huyo atakuwa na hamu kubwa nacho kwa kukumbuka utamu alioupata hapo awali.
Matumizi hutumiwa kuelezea mtu ambaye anakitamani kitu au hali nzuri aliyokuwa nayo hapo awali ambayo sasa haipo.
Authentic, natural, planned. Transforming. Endless benefits. Slaty, purely Kenyan. Buy now on Jumia or Amazon.
is it about wildlife that is so captivating to us? Why do wildlife encounters stir powerful emotions and memories? Why do some of us dedicate their lives to protect wildlife?
This center is there to connect the appreciation and the challenges that may be facing the wildlife.
You find that some of the species that used to exist, if it were not conservation, today we may not be having black rhino in Kenya.
We celebrate these animals and the love that people have for them. Catch TV47 Wildlife every Friday at 8 p.m.
You're watching TV47, the home of untold stories.
Right, I think 1 minute past 7 a.m. You're watching Morning Cafe. Welcome back. And before the break, we were talking about matters new NSSF new rates. And I think Ngugi.
Yes.
I think basically matters are low. Do you see this particular case going all the way to Supreme Court? And will it be dead on arrival? The legality around it?
It's likely to end up in the Supreme Court because it touches on very pertinent issues, issues that deal with employees and employers, issues which are highlighted in the Constitution, and the Supreme Court also has the authority to look at such issues or interpretation of the law. That's one of the mandate of the Supreme Court, and so. One of the issues raised is whether the 2013 Act was properly, or rather should be implemented. And that goes into the details on how it came to being. And so, was there public participation? Were the individuals who are part of this, who are affected by this Act consulted? And so, from that, the judgment of a Court of Appeal, we have seen that some of these things are actually, there's some gaps in some of these issues. And so we foresee it getting appealed to. Yes.
All right. Wakili Othiambo, yes. I believe now I had earlier said that your particular title, Public Policy and Fiscal Decentralization Specialist, is quite mouthful, but then there's also Wakili there.
Thank you.
Looking at that particular statement by FKE, and just for the benefit of the viewers, to just highlight some of this particular, what has been said by the Federation of the Kenya employees. Employers still hold the view that a pension scheme is an employee benefit, and therefore the Employment and Labor Relations Court has the jurisdiction to determine the issues arising out of this employment issue. It also says that the issues around the implementation of the Act need to be addressed due to the serious implications it has for employment in our country. What do you read into this particular statement?
I think that statement raises very legitimate concerns on the part of the employers, that is the Federation of Kenya Employers. Because you see, other than them having issues with the legitimacy of this particular statute, they are also raising practical challenges that will define the implementation of this particular statute in the event that we proceed to go with it based on the announcement of the Court of Appeal on the same. Because some of the things that they are asking are things like, okay, do we charge, are the deductions going to be based on things like basic pay, or is it going to be based on the total amount of monies that one receives in the form of emoluments? They are also asking things like the practical realities that would come with the implementation of the Act, including things like the start date. And when you put all of those together, you clearly get to see the concern being the fact that, one, it is not just about them being concerned as to the legitimacy, as to the constitutionality, as to the propriety of this particular statute, but also they are concerned on some of the difficulties that would be associated with this particular statute in the event that they start implementing the same, including pronouncing themselves as to the fact that this ideally should be something that is sorted as between employer and employee, and not necessarily a matter that gets the kind of judicial significance that it has gotten, to the extent that the court now mandates some kind of employer-employer relationship over and above what ideally should be something that they're able to sort as between themselves. So over and above what I've stated to be the legitimacy of the act in terms of its propriety, plus many other concerns that have been raised around it, they are equally concerned about the practical challenges that would come with the implementation of the act. And you know, a law is as good as its implementation. You'd rather not have a law, but as opposed to having a law that you seriously have difficulties in implementing the same.
And speaking of matters implementation, Kadar, Okilengo is talking about matters public participation, but then how best should this be done? On public participation, the employers and employees, and all that.
You see, if you look at the statement FK has released, one of the things it's talking about is consultation. And there are key stakeholders in the whole thing, because they're the major employers of this, the people who are beneficiaries. And if it's not handled, properly, with the right consultation, sitting together, putting together the right framework and all that, I think it will just be, it's just a waste of time, because if you are intending good thing for the Kenyan employees, then it's only fair that you discuss and have a proper consultation with the people who are concerned, and that is the Kenya Federation of Employers, because they are the majority employers. So consultation is very important. It's key. Otherwise, this country is we are known for litigating every issue, even when we are not supposed to go to court. So I think we should avoid this issue of litigation and all that. Sit down. People should just swallow their egos and come to the table for discussion. And at the end of the day, it is the Kenyan employee who is benefiting. And it's always right that the employers also give the right dues in terms of this deduction and NSF to the employees. So it's important that there should be a consultation. But again, remember, and we should not reduce the discussion of NSF to only the Federation of Kenya Employees. Okay, I'm sure you'll agree with me that there are also other statutory bodies that employ people, the counties, who are known for not even contributing these deductions. Sometimes you wonder, the way it's always in the news that county employees, someone goes to hospital, for example, NHIF, they don't, you go to hospital, you are sick, your account is run through the machine, it fails to, because your employer who happens to be a county government X didn't submit your dues. So I think it's important that there should be a proper consultation of all stakeholders, and at the end of the day, it's good for the Kenyan employee, but again, without consultation, without having the right discussions, I don't think we're going anywhere.
Finally, before we finalize on matters in SSF, do you see a particular scenario where right now it's from 200 bob to 2,000 Kenyan shillings? Do you see now again from now 2,000, it might be increased further as we move in the future? This particular amount will be increasing.
You see, we used to deduct 200, now it's 2K. The question is the value of money always increasing, decreasing, because 200 when that amount was put into into the NSF Act or whatever, there was a value for 200. Maybe right now the value of 2K and 200 are almost the same 10 years or 15 years later. So I won't be surprised if it increases in future, because due to inflation and all that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I want us to get now into a meat of conversation this particular morning, the matters, the tax furor and the whole tax law. And now recently, Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah asked the National Treasury to furnish the Parliament with the report, the tax waivers report since January 2018 up to date. And this again speaks volumes on President William Ruto's ambitious plans to have a fair playground, if you may, on matters, taxation in the country. I'll start with you, Kedar. Is this basically, is there a genuine concern here on tax waivers, or is this just politics?
You see, yesterday in the newspapers or in the mainstream media, there was this report that was released that the import that we made that came into this country, the report, the figures don't match the figures of the country where we imported things from. There's a variance of about 432 billion between the imports we made from China and what has been captured by KRA. That shows that there was a tax evasion, literally. Yeah. So the question is, who was evading tax? Again, the last 5 years, the post-handshake within the government, key institutions have been used to victimize people who were seen maybe to be not politically correct and who are doing businesses. You can imagine, you could see individuals being targeted. There was this thing called multi-agency task forces. Goods were being banned. Sometimes goods arrive at the port, you are told they are not original or whatever, and then they see. So there was this whole thing of confusion, while at the same time few people were benefiting from that kind of, very few people were benefiting. So basically your question will be, and this is the question many people are asking, especially in the digital media and in the discussion, the trends and all that. Mm-hmm. Where is the 432 billion? Who was given tax waivers? Did they deserve to be given tax waivers? So I think the president means well. He wants to increase our revenue collection. He wants to make sure that we pay our bills as a country, we pay back our debts, and the only way that can happen is to have proper conversation on taxation, and everyone should pay their tax, whatever they are owed. We have seen, his statement on tax the other day, him saying, this country is not a banana, it's not an animal farm, mm-hmm. That where few people have their way at the expense of everyone else. And that has rattled. We have seen people who have never come to the public media, to the public stage, talking about themselves. I don't want to mention names. It's there for everyone to, I'm sure people who follow news know who came out and spoke, yeah? So that shows that, sometimes when you're used to privilege, equality seems oppression. That's why people are coming out, because they feel they're oppressed, which when even there's no oppression, you're just told, pay your bills, my brother. Follow the due process, give your tax, do your tax returns and all that. So I think... You
don't think that President William Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza government are attacking, or rather targeting two families?
No, I don't think they are targeting anyone. Why should anyone be targeted? There's nowhere he has even said, the president has not even talked about it's that much about individual or anyone, and I don't think he should talk about individuals or anything. He just said, let KRA do its work, because there are people who abuse the system at the expense of everyone. If you remember, the main reason why the Mount Kenya voters revolted against the handshake government was the issue of business. Nyamakima was closed down. People who used to import electronics, or people, Isli, things literally stopped. Okay. We used to have about, reports have that about 10 to 15 trucks will every night go to Isli to, offload cargo all the way from Mombasa. But, the last 5 years, there was literally nothing was going on. So what happened? That means, again, this issue, as I said, the multitask force agency, whatever, okay, has been used to target individuals. And, it's there. It's in the public news.
Right. Wakil Othembo, I think, again, he was speaking about the whole digital media and the questions raised. And I think one of the biggest questions there was, why 2018? Because, it could have gone way back to 2013 maybe, or 1963, since independence. Then why 2018? Why do you think 2018?
You see, we have got what we call the Tax Procedures Act. And in terms of the Tax Procedures Act, there's a limit in terms of time that you can go back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the limit is about 5 years. Okay. Yeah, initially it used to be more before the Act was amended, before the Act was actually passed in 2015. You could actually go back 7 years. So there's some sort of limitation in terms of the number of years that you can go back into demanding for tax records and things like that. So 2018 is not peculiar to me because it falls within that time span of 5 years.
So it has nothing to do with because the handshake began in 2018 and all that.
It could be a coincidence based on the fact that in terms of the limitations that are imposed by law, you can't ideally go back so much into time. All right, so I would want to be optimistic that that is what is informing the year 2018. Basically the provisions of the Tax Procedures Act of 2015. If there is any other ulterior motive to it, then of course 2018 provides an opportune moment to try and settle scores, if at all there are those who are still aggrieved by possibly what transpired between 2018 and 2022.
But then, be it as it may, it begs the question.
Yes.
Kimani Ichung'wah was a member of parliament at that time, and he was in the finance committee at that particular time. Why didn't he raise, and his members raise, any anomalies at that time?
Kenya is an interesting country. Kenya is an interesting country. We only make noise at times when we are benefiting or not benefiting. So it depends. When you're benefiting, possibly, there's no need, there's no incentive to make noise. When you're not benefiting from the same, then there are all incentives to make noise. But then again, it is very strange that people are taking to podiums, political podiums for that matter, and making declarations to the effect that people have not paid tax. You see, if you look at the Tax Procedures Act, it lays out a very procedural way of going about this particular matter. KRA is an institution that is involved with matters. It is an institution that is entrusted with powers. It is an institution that is entrusted with a mandate to collect taxes. And as part of that collection, it has got powers given unto it under the Tax Procedures Act, powers of assessment, powers of enforcement, powers of collection. So for me, I would expect that people are not politicizing the issue that is taxation.
Okay.
Taxation by itself, it's a no-brainer. All of us are expected to pay taxes. There are no exclusions, there are no exceptions, except for when those exceptions are provided for in law. So even for the waivers themselves, if you look at Article 210 of the Constitution, it is very clear as to the fact that waivers can be granted, but the only thing is that waivers must be granted by law. But then again, it is also interesting when I saw some reports to the effect that the amount of waivers that have been granted amounted to about 300 billion Kenya shillings.
Now that you mentioned that, for clarity of our viewers this particular morning, does the estate duty tax exist in this country?
The estate duty tax does not exist. It was repealed. But even if you're to look at that particular legislation, the truth of the matter is that the estate of the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, if you look, and also the estate of the late former President Daniel Arap Moi, they were excluded from the payment of estate duty tax by law up to, I think, 1982, after which the law has been repealed. So for me, that is a moot point. It is just something, it is something that has been thrown out there for purposes of, bringing up emotions and things like that. Even I don't recall any of my relatives that has paid estate duty tax ever since I was born. So the point I'm trying to make is this: let us deal with tax issues based on the fact that, one, every other Kenyan has to pay taxes. Two, there are procedural ways of laying claims to taxes in terms of assessment, in terms of enforcement, in terms of collection, and everything that comes with it. And then three, this is a matter that does not necessarily need the kind of debate that we're seeing at the moment. Kenya, in terms of one of the major areas for the kind of revenue that we get to support some of the provision of public goods and services, are taxes. So that is where we are at the moment.
Okay, Linguki, speaking of matters still on tax exemptions, do we need them? Do we need tax exemptions in the country, and what's the significance of them?
Yes, we need exemptions, but the exemptions are supposed to be used in a way to either as an incentive or to actually attract more people to get into business. And so when we introduce the exemptions, we want to make sure that certain kind of businesses are carried out, or a certain kind of products are produced in the country. And so, for example, when there was an exemption on the motorbike taxes, importation, that was supposed to ensure that more young people were able to import motorbikes at a lower rate, and that there was more business being done by the motorbike owners, and so boda owners. And so the exemptions should be there, and they are there, they are legally there to actually encourage or entice more people to get into the business. There are also exemptions which are allowed for corporates to make sure that they actually increase or employ more people, because when you employ more people, they get to pay more taxes. And so there's nothing wrong with exemptions.
All right. Kadar, how much will it change if, say, for instance, if the Kenyatta family and the Moi family, for example, if they were not paying taxes and now they start paying taxes, how much will it change in this country?
I don't think even we should be arguing about tax and then in relation to individuals. The Kenyatta and the Mois are a citizen like another person, and I don't think we should drag their name into the issue of whether they should pay tax or not. They should pay tax like any other Kenyan. So I don't want to go that direction. What I want to say is that everybody should pay tax, as the president has said. And like he said, this is not an animal farm. But they have been maybe in a position of privilege that has either been abused, in terms of how things are conducted. And that's why Wakili has said, even if we're supposed to give exemption, we must give exemptions to encourage growth of businesses, to encourage investors, to encourage basically like giving if you remember the last 5 years or so, there was an investor who came to this country who wanted to build we were told a cement factory, and he didn't build and he just went back. At that time, the narrative that was being driven was that there are people who ask for huge amount of money, But again, the investor came back when this regime came to office, and he was seen in the swearing in of President William Ruto. Contrary to perceptions that were created at that time, that it was some people who were around the current president who were maybe asking. So you see, sometimes the whole thing is politics, but I think the president means well. He wants to increase our tax collection, and so that we can transajitegemea. So let everyone pay their dues. The people who are being rattled by these tax issues are people who have always used to be, they're used to privileges. Okay. And like I said again, if you are used to privilege, you will think equality is oppression. Just make your returns and pay tax.
Let's talk about now people who do not have really those particular privileges that you talk about, and the micro, small and medium enterprises. This particular, the whole tax wars up there, so to speak, definitely have a ramification, so you say, Odhiambo?
Well, I would want to assume possibly not, in the sense that, let me qualify my statement by saying this. The wars that we are seeing at the national level, I would want to believe it is just that. It is one side of the political divide throwing shade at the other side of the political divide. But in terms of our tax policy, in terms of our taxation intentions, in terms of the need to raise money to raise money for purposes of implementing our budget, service delivery, basically that is the provision of public goods and services, I would want to believe that it might not necessarily be affected by that. But then the small and, those small businesses, they've also made quite a bit of appeal to the relevant entities, including the highest political organs in the country, that there is need to rationalize the environment in which they operate. And in terms of rationalization of that environment, some of the taxes and levies that have been collected, whether by national government entities or county government entities, they are not necessarily supportive of business, in the sense that their tax obligations at times they're very high, and many other times they're also not very clear, because you could be thinking that your books are proper, but then all of a sudden you're slapped with a tax demand, and when you look at it, it's not necessarily making sense. But it is not because you did not want to pay. It is because you never just understood the environment in which you're operating in, in terms of the taxes that you're supposed to pay. But even when you get to pay, there are also those who are saying that it is not conducive for when it comes to the ease of doing business. We've got plenty of obligations. We've got plenty of monies that are being paid in the form of taxes.
Do Kenyans understand the tax processes in the country?
Well, the KRA has really tried on that, but then again, not everyone fully understands the same. Even I would not really pretend that I totally understand that environment. But KRA has done a commendable job so far, but there's still a lot more that they should do in terms of sensitization, in terms of just making people understand what they're supposed to do, including their obligations when it comes to that which they're supposed to do. So to that extent, yes, they've done a good job, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And of course, going by what we've seen, KRA also is trying to look more of a service than an authority. And yeah, you go to them, I mean, they write you all, I mean, letters, notices and things like that. They welcome you to their offices, you talk through them, they make you try and understand what is it that they want from you, how is it that you're not compliant, and things like that. That by itself is a good thing. It's very commendable. But also, there should be some bit of relief when it comes to just the amount of monies that people pay in the form of taxes. And let's be clear, we as a nation, we can never tax ourselves to prosperity. It is not just the right way of going about it. People have said, when you try to tax yourself into prosperity, then it is the equivalent of standing inside of a bucket and trying to lift yourself up. Okay? So we really don't want to go that route. So there has to be some kind of rationalization, such that therefore when it comes to the payment of taxes, not only is it equal, but it is equally equitable, but then also some bit of relief should also come with the payment of taxes.
All right, so you actually think that President William Ruto's ambitious plans on taxman, they're just at this point quite ambitious?
Well, you see, the thing is this, it shouldn't just be taxation alone. And when we talk about taxation, we also must be very clear that we have to diversify our taxes. And when I talk of diversification of taxes, then it is incumbent upon the current administration to look at various opportunities, and forms of raising taxes and things like that. But then again, it can be tax. Okay, right. That is where there's a problem. So the catch should also lie on the ability to bring in as many people as possible into, the tax bracket. If you look at it, majority of the people who pay taxes are those who are either employed formally,
okay,
yeah, to the exclusion of those who are informally employed. So majority of them, I mean, when I talk of payee and things like that, some of the largest incomes in the form of taxation revenue comes from payee. And payee comes from who? Payee largely comes from those who are in formal employment.
All that particular thought, we'll be getting into matters tax after this short break. I want us to discuss do we need a change in restructure in our policies in matters tax, and what happens to that particular report if furnished by the National Treasury. You're watching One Cafe, 7:30 a.m. Don't go too far.
TV47, the home of untold stories. Je, maumivu ya kichwa na kukosesha amani? Kaluma Strong hutuliza maumivu ya kichwa, maumivu ya mwili na hata huondoa joto jingi mwilini. Kaluma Strong ina aspirin kama kiungo. Maumivu ya kizidi, muone daktari.
Kilimo Diaries is not your one-stop show. We are always on the move to different farms, and it's always unpredictable, with animals, crops, and advice from both farmers and experts. We are always here to inform you on everything agriculture, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on your home of untold stories.
Kaluma King Herbal Lozenges zinazo nguvu maradufu kutuliza kikohozi, vidonda vya koo na mafua. Kaluma King ni shwari.
Tika mama huyo muharifu kaiba kuku zangu, vifaranga wangu na mayai zote pia kabeba. Haya, tika mama huyo.
Maumivu yakizidi, muone daktari. You are watching TV47, the home of untold stories.
All right, thank you for your patronage. So far, you're watching Morning Cafe this beautiful Wednesday morning, and we're talking matters tax and how the taxman is up to the task. And Wakili Ngugi, do we need restructuring policies on matters, surrounding tax, and how should we go about it?
Before we think of restructuring, I think there are pertinent questions which Kenyans are asking, or rather are in the eyes of the Kenyans. Some of these issues have been concerning some of the leakages on some of the areas, whereby the question has been, we have seen some corruption cases, we've seen some people not being able to pay their taxes, or not actually having come out in the public and actually even been taken to court for non-payment of taxes. And the question has been, as a common mwananchi, should I proceed and also pay my taxes? Yet I see some people in the who are closer to power, working scot-free. And so some of these issues need to be looked into. First of all, we need to make the tax regime more attractive to the common mwananchi. And I believe the previous government was able to actually show us what taxes can do for us as a country. Although most of our money was borrowed from other countries, actually the East, for the construction of most of the roads in this country, you can now foresee that we have smoother roads, we have more roads in this country. We have systems which are working, but at the same time we have an expanded government which your tax and my tax is supposed to pay some of these employees. And the question is, do we need such big institutions? For example, do we need to have certain positions in government? And so if we are able to make or to seal some of these, or rather reduce some of these numbers of some of our leaders, and we have a leaner, for example, cabinet, a leaner institutions, basically, a leaner appointments being made by the president, then it will be very attractive to the common mwananchi to be able to see, okay, I'm not paying my tax to pay for positions which we do not need. And so those are some of the questions. We have another issue from where I sit in the judiciary, where over 400 billion shillings is stuck in litigation, whereby there are so many cases, there are so many companies and businesses which are actually in court over some of these issues or over some restrictions, yet some of these judgments, if they were delivered, some of these companies will proceed and continue doing their businesses. And so the question is, can we first of all seal some of these loopholes by making sure that the judiciary is able to finalize some of these cases? That's 400 billion shillings that is stuck in the judiciary. Number two, can we make sure that we make the tax attractive, whereby we see, for example, we have a cabinet of maybe 12 CSs or 10 CSs. We don't have to keep on creating new positions. We revisit some of the legislation that allows some former leaders to continue receiving some pension and receiving a bigger number of police and security. Can we revisit some of these issues? And then from there, we'll be able to see, okay, the government is not borrowing much. The government is being able to actually work with whatever is collected. And so the smaller gap then will attract the common mwananchi to now even volunteer and say, okay, here is what I have made. This is what I want to give to Caesar.
And it's more attractive to pay Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
Yes.
Kadar, the parliament resumes, 13th parliament resumes next week. So this particular report that majority leader wants and the parliament wants within the next 14 days. So what happens to this report after the parliament has it because it bears names and other information? So what happens to it?
First of all,
finally that they have it.
If it comes out, because I don't know that it will, because he has asked for it, Treasury is yet to respond. So we can only speculate about it. And that speculation, assuming it comes out, I think everyone will know what has been happening the last 5 years. Who was undeclaring, who was evading tax, who was getting privileges that maybe they don't deserve, and all that, and at what cost to the economy and to the common man.
So what do we do with this information? Because
now from there,
I mean, again, even with the SGR, we saw quite a number of billions and all that.
From there, you see, from there now, once that happens, and we get to know the shenanigans around tax and all that, I think Parliament will take a step ahead and maybe form a task force or something like that to investigate all these things, and maybe finally recommend that people who have been evading taxes or people who have been misusing privileges that they accessed pay back to the economy, or KRA fill their forms and all that. So the thing is this, listen, I think the leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, much as he was in parliament, you have asked my brother that maybe why he didn't ask at that time, or he was a member of, was it the budget committee or something like that?
In the finance committee.
He was, the finance committee. You see, there's a time for everything. I think this is the right time to have that conversation. You see, the political...
In 2018, it wasn't the right time.
No, you see, the political climate was choking at that time to even question some things. And we all know that, yeah? But right now, you see, freedom is finally here. People can talk about these things. People can have a proper conversation. And that's why the Hustler Nation freed this nation from the political choking I've been talking about.
Right, speaking of matters Hustler Nation, I want us to get into the conversation of Hustler Fund. And since its launch in November, I believe it was the last day of November 2022, recently on Friday, the President, William Ruto, said that 800,000 users have defaulted on their loans. Okay, Thembo, when you look at these particular numbers, and I believe the government is set to roll the second tier of the Hustler Fund, where Kenyans will be able to borrow up to 100,000, from 100,000 Kenyan shillings to 2.5 million Kenyan shillings. Looking at these particular numbers, 800,000 defaulters, are we good or are we bad? How do you read into these numbers?
Well, 800,000 is a very big number. I will not lie. It is a very big number. I've not had the opportunity of doing a percentage relative to the number of people who've subscribed to the Hustler Fund, and basically not just subscribing, but also having been able to borrow from the Hustler Fund. So 800,000 out of whatever number that is, just looking at the number alone, 800,000, that's a very big number. And of course, it is also not shocking to me that there are defaults. The only thing that would be shocking is the number of those who've defaulted. And it will also be it will also be interesting to try find out why is it that they've defaulted. What are some of the things that are informing the defaults? Is it that are they defaulting simply because they do not want to pay back the monies, or is it that they're defaulting simply because they do not have the financial wherewithal to repay the money? And considering the fact that the amount of money involved is not also very high, then it can also be quite telling of where we stand in terms of the economy and its performance. I mean, every other person would believe that if you borrow, say, 3,000 up to a maximum of 3,000 Kenya shillings, and you've got 28 to 30 days to repay the same, then the belief would be that 800,000 people will be able to repay that amount of money. So for the fact that up to 8,000 people have been able to repay monies that are smaller than 3,000 Kenya shillings, then to me it's a bit of where we stand economically. Is it that they do not have the money to repay, or is it that they are not, is it that they do not have the money to repay, or is it that they do not want to repay? But even with that, I also would want to hope that in terms of the people who are manning the fund, though I've also seen that the Ugatuzi group, they've actually gone to court. They did go to court last year challenging the legality of the Hustler Fund, the manner in which it was set up, the manner in which it has been operationalized, including the fact that they've been able to get orders to the effect that the directors, the supposed directors of the fund, should not assume office, should not be sworn into office till the matter that has been brought before the courts are actually deliberated on and possibly determined. But even with that, and not necessarily going into the reservations that we have, personally I have quite a bit of reservations as to the legality of the fund in terms of setup. There is a law that they came up with, but they did not necessarily follow that law in terms of setting up the fund. So without going into the legality of the fund itself, I would want to believe that the last 2 or 3 months has also provided some opportune moment for those who are in charge of the fund to basically pilot the project and in terms of pilot, be able to see where its strengths lie, where its weaknesses lie, then as a matter of fact be able to try rationalize and try make it better, such that when we now go into the bigger monies, like they say, then some of the teething problems that otherwise would have been associated with a fund as new as the Hustler Fund have been able to be rationalized, or have been able to be brought down for the smooth and effective implementation of the fund.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Wakili Ngugi, so later this month, the government is set to roll out the microcredit for SACCOs. Do you feel like we as a country, we are ready? Because even during the launch of the first tier of this particular Hustler Fund, there was the whole speculations. There was mixed reactions of it. And look at this particular numbers, 800,000 defaulters. Are we as a country ready for this second tier of the launch?
I don't think we're ready. And these are the leakages I was talking about, and some of the things that we haven't been able to first of all deal with. There's a question on what is the legislation governing that particular introduction of SME loans. And so you will find that some of these introductions are not looked into by providing a proper mechanism that will make sure that we are protecting both parties, that there is when it comes to the money borrowed by institutions, the money can be clearly be repaid back. When it comes to even the creation of the bodies or of the individuals who are going to manage this, we have not looked through to make sure that we are having a proper legislation for it. And so, as a country, I don't think we are ready for that. There's no, I haven't heard much about it being shared out there to prepare the public. And the question also will be, do we need it? Because we have had some of these SMEs really benefiting from other institutions. So do we need it to come from the government? Or whatever we have in the private sectors works already. So we need to, first of all, sensitize the public, make sure that they are aware of it, that we have conducted studies to see whether it's really important for us to do it. Otherwise, we'll be sinking money in a hole that we cannot retrieve. And we can already see that with the Hustler Fund, because it was, in my view, it was a political move that was never meant to maybe not benefit the many, but just a few. And we have not properly looked at its implementation. And that's why we're having some of these loopholes.
All right, and at this point, I'm even curious, have you gentlemen tapped into the Hustler Fund and borrowed even 500 shillings? I would like us to, later on, take a look at a soundbite by President William Ruto on matters, the whole Hustler Fund, a little bit later on. Director will guide me on that. But then, all right, I think we can listen to what President William Ruto was speaking on matters, the Hustler Fund, on Friday.
$1.2 million Kenyans are servicing their loans regularly. 800,000 are behind schedule, but I'm sure they will catch up. And we have lent 17 billion Kenya shillings to these members. We have lent 17 billion Kenya shillings, and members of the Hustler Fund have also saved 850 million Kenya shillings. So we are now building a pool of savings. Like you have built 28 billion shillings in 50 years, we will catch up with you very soon. Because we are almost 1 billion shillings and it's not yet 3 months. I am sure in 2.5 months we will reach 1 billion shillings, and therefore we'll catch up with you very soon. So we want to build the sense of savings in Kenya, because development, investment is a function of savings. If we don't save, we cannot borrow. The reason why Police Sacco is lending is because there are people saving.
Today's celebration is not just for the police, but to also celebrate the entire Sacco movement in Kenya. We have 361 registered cooperative Saccos, ranging from the farmers and productive sector, ranging from finance. There are also those in education sector, the teacher Sacco. There are those in transport sector. There are those, again, dealing with small lending and credit. So all of them have a combined asset, Your Excellency, of 1.5 trillion with a loan book of 1 trillion and a deposit of 980 billion. So from that, Your Excellency, you can see 30% of our savings, national savings, comes from the corporate.
Right, there you have it, the soundbite by President William Ruto, and also the Cabinet Secretary in Matters Cooperatives, that is Simon Chelegui. Gentlemen, you hear those particular sentiments, and even the mood. The President William Ruto was smiling, talking about the Hustler Fund and this particular baby that he has seen grow for the past few months. Kedar, the president says he'll catch up on them. He didn't go into detail on how everything will go about that. But then what do you read into the president's tone when he talks about the Hustler Fund and his expectations? Because he says that, he wants a government and he wants, the country to focus more on saving. So what do you read into the president's tone on this?
You see, as you have said, the president was smiling when he's talking about the Hustler Fund. You see, the Hustler Fund is one of the things that has propelled William Ruto to power, because it was a key campaign tool in the last election, and it appealed to majority of Kenyans, especially hustlers who are maybe over 65% of the population.
Okay.
And that's why he still had to talk about these things. Secondly, yes, the Hustler Nation defaulters, the Hustler Fund defaulters, the 800,000, are again being given a chance to pay their, the earliest possible. And there's an incentive for that. The incentive is that if they pay, they will be able to borrow their savings. When you take the Hustler Fund, there's a certain amount of saving that you make out of what you are being given. But you see, you can only take that saving after 1 year. Now the defaulters, for them, it's a different story. You are told, look, pay what you have defaulted and come and take also your savings. Unlike the good borrower who will have to wait for 1 year. So that's an incentive for them to come and clear and I think they will look into it. Secondly, the Hustler Fund was a campaign tool that was, it has been actualized. It's very rare that campaign manifestos are actualized within the first 1 year, let alone in the first 1 or 2 months. The Hustler Fund was launched in December. President William Ruto was sworn in September. In a span of 3 months, he has fulfilled a promise that many thought it would be impossible to achieve. And that's why the opposition, we have seen political people, the political opponents coming out saying that, 500, trying to demean the Hustler Fund. Little do they understand, the life and the livelihood of a hustler. So for me, the Hustler Fund means well. I think it will, it's only that the defaulters need to take advantage of the incentive that they are being given to pay. Because you are told, if you pay, you get your borrowing. You get your savings, unlike the good borrower who has to wait for a year.
But where did this particular funds come from? And yesterday also, according to the supplementary budget, financial year 2022-2023, it states that matters is now the Hustler Fund. The State Department for Cooperatives is earmarked for an additional 19.7 billion Kenyan shillings. And when you look at the IMF program, fourth review, indicated that Hustler Fund should be allocated about 12 billion in supplementary budget. This is about 60.9% of the department's proposed increase. One is, where do these particular funds come from? And is the president walking a tightrope on these particular numbers?
The fund for the Hustler Fund, where they come from?
Yeah.
I think I've already seen that there is allocation from the IMF, there is allocation from the Ministry of the right ministry, that is the Ministry for SMEs, and I think by Chelugwe, yes. So, where the money come from is clear. The government doesn't operate in darkness.
But then at that time, the government said it had, and it came into a government that it inherited, empty coffers.
You see, we're talking about, inheriting empty coffers is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Planning for another budgetary year is a different thing altogether. You see? And when you're told, when they say they have inherited an empty cover, it doesn't have to be negative, yeah, but it can be way below than what is supposed to be there. That's what maybe my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. And at the same time, the government, has it's a going concern. Even if they didn't find a coin there, they are people willing to give money to a government. The government is not like me and you. Yeah, they have options of accessing money.
Right.
Yes.
Wakil Uthombo, number one, do we have a fiscal discipline as a country? And also, when you took a look at these particular numbers, the supplementary budget from the National Treasury for FY 2022-2023, is the president walking a tightrope here?
Well, if you look at the space in which I operate in, quite a number of my colleagues in that space make the point that the problem in Kenya at the moment is not entirely a revenue or a tax problem. The problem in Kenya is an expenditure problem. And when we are, and basically for purposes of illustrating the point that I'm making, the truth of the matter is this, or the most profound question that we should be asking ourselves is this: are we living within our means?
Okay.
Are we coming up with budgetary proposals that are realistic? Are they in tandem with our economic, social status, challenges, reality, and things like that? All right. Such that therefore, if you do propose to have a 3 trillion plus budget, but you are not even sure how much you're going to raise in terms of financing, not just the entire budget, but even half of it. You know, because you have a 3 trillion plus budget, but you're only able to raise up to 1.7 trillion Kenya shillings. So that means you have a deficit of 1.3 trillion Kenya shillings. That is almost half the budget. So if you have got a deficit of 1.3 trillion Kenya shillings, where is this money going to come from? How are you going to plug that deficit, right? So there was this clarion call that was made to the effect that we need to live within our means, and as part of living within our means, they were going to implement some austerity measures, including the fact that there was a proposals to hive out of the budget almost 300 billion Kenya shillings. I do not know where we lost that, we'd assume that trajectory, but somehow either we've run out of steam or we've simply abandoned the idea. But as it is, Kenya might not necessarily be suffering a revenue problem, all right? Because the question has been, that which we collect, how do we apply it? The application of monies collected in the form of tax or taxes has been a key concern for many. Are we living within our means? And when I ask whether or not we're living within our means, I'm also persuaded to believe that there is also a lot of leakage. There's also a lot of wastage within government itself. Our priorities might not necessarily be, our priorities, others would say they are topsy-turvy, in the sense that we are putting monies into things that might not necessarily qualify as priorities, or even where we put monies, there are problems to the extent that money is getting lost. People are either stealing. You know, there's this statement that was once made, and it was mind-boggling to hear the president then saying that we are losing 2 billion Kenya shillings every day. 2 billion Kenya shillings is not a joke. Every day for 365 days. Even if you're to say 300 days in a year, that's 600 billion Kenya shillings. I mean, how are we losing? How is it that we're losing that kind of money?
Right.
Yeah. So if it is true that we are losing even 300 billion or 600 billion in a year, and not necessarily applying it towards the provision of public goods and services as provided for under the budget, then it's a problem. All right. Then on the issue that is the Hustler Fund, one of the concerns was that without necessarily, the argument has always been that the Hustler Fund ought to have been preceded by a supplementary in the budget, and seemingly that never happened. So I'm seeing they're working backwards for purposes of providing for funds, for purposes of legitimizing that which ought to have happened initially. And that is one of the issues that I'm seeing Ugatuzi took to court.
Once again, sorry, I think when I'm going to a short break, I'll really have to cut you short every single time.
Thank you.
Hold that particular thought. We'll be getting into extensive on the whole Hustler Fund and matters budget making process, this even as the National Assembly and even the Senate are set to resume next week on the 14th of February, and this will be top on the agenda, the whole budget making process, and even as we wait for June 2023. We're taking a short break. Stay with us right here.
47, the home of untold stories. Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Are you looking for a college that will shape your future career? At Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences, we offer advanced courses with personalized attention to our students. Come and get your diploma or certificate in cosmetology, hairdressing and beauty therapy, diploma in community development and social work, or certification in catering and accommodation operation. We also offer diploma in nutrition and dietetics and many more. All of our graduates have secured employment in the job market, while others have gone into entrepreneurship. What are you waiting for? Join us today. For more information on how you can enroll, visit us at the London Beauty Building, 5th floor, Taveta Road, Nairobi, or call us on 0726 031 109 or 0784 515 606. Facebook, Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences, or on Instagram, College of Sciences. Our January intake is ongoing. Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences is the cutting edge college.
Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako. Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma Pain Balm. Shhh. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari. TV 47, the home of untold stories.
Well, 3 minutes past the top of the 8 a.m. this beautiful Wednesday morning. You're watching Morning Cafe. Remember, you can always talk to us on our socials below your screens at TV 47 KE on Facebook, and tell us what you think on matters the government's tax plans and all that. And we're discussing about the whole Hustler Fund. And Wakili Thiambo, I believe I cut you short even as you continue to make your point.
All right. It is all about the fact that one of the challenges, one of the issues that has been taken before court for consideration was the whole thing about where the money input into the Hustler Fund came from. Ideally, the whole thing ought to have been preceded by by the supplementary budget. A supplementary ought to have been made, and when I talk of a supplementary when I talk of the fact that a supplementary ought to have actually been put in place for purposes of ensuring that this money is captured in the budget and therefore allocated as per the budget. This is simply because as of the time the current president, that is His Excellency William Ruto, was getting into office, we already had a budget in place. And that is the budget 2022-2023 financial year.
Yeah.
So it is the Hustler Fund in terms of provisions for it was not actually in the budget. So the ideal way of going about it would have been to promote a supplementary budget that actually captures this fund, and then once it is allocated, once there's an allocation to the Hustler Fund, then you proceed to operationalize the fund itself. But this never happened, and it has formed part of the concerns that have been taken before the High Court by the Ugatuzi group, Ugatuzi caucus. The Ugatuzi caucus is all about promoting and of course coming up with certain proposed changes to the constitution. They are looking at what is not necessarily working, and they have a whole array of issues that they've put into a constitutional amendment bill. Yeah, so that is the Ugatuzi group. But the point that I was just trying to make is that we are now seeing them working backwards and trying to rationalize some of these things that never happened as ideally is intended. The only time really that you can you can proceed to spend monies that are not provided for in the budget would be when there's an emergency. But I don't think the Hustler Fund qualified as an emergency. So ideally, it ought to have been preceded by a supplementary budget to that, a supplementary vote or allocation to that effect.
All right, even as we finalize on the whole Hustler Fund, Wakili Ngugi, the legality of the Hustler Fund, again, even as Ugetuzi says, you know, it's not legal and it's not, basically it's not legal, and some other entities have come out and said, what is the legal, challenged the legality of the Hustler Fund. As a lawyer, what do you think of, the anchorment of Hustler Fund in law?
There's a provision on how you introduce any kind of a development in the country, and one of those requirements is that it has to have an anchor legislature that should be able to even mandate and tell what the work or the purpose of that body is going to do. And with the Hustler Fund, if I may ask you, I may throw back this question to you. Which act anchors the Hustler Fund? Have we had any debate in Parliament with the creation of such an act? Might you know of any act of Parliament that has been created for this purpose?
I have not seen MPs debating on the same act.
We do not have an act of Parliament that has actually creates this Hustler Fund. And I believe that's one of the issues that is in court, that is being deliberated, that has been raised by the different institutions that have filed that case. And so that's the procedure, basically. And we expect that probably the government might be working behind the scenes to make sure that they will introduce an anchor act that will be able to now, maybe before the judgment date or thereabout, then we are going to see maybe some sittings of Parliament trying to amend some of these issues.
Right. Yeah. And finally, Kadar, the governance structure of the Hustler Fund. I mean, at the end of the day, it might be a noble, move to have hustlers borrow, quote unquote hustlers borrow these particular funds. But then at the end of the day, there needs to be governance on it. How should we go about it as a country?
I think you're right that there should be some governance in how this Hustler Fund is being managed. The legalities around it has to be sorted out. But you can't just throw the baby with the bathwater. Or was it like that? I don't know whether I am phrasing it. Yes.
Ngugi says it's fine.
Yes. Yeah. The thing is, you see, the Hustler Fund, you can only strengthen it. You can, because it's something that is really noble. It's something, like I said, that addresses, sometimes something can be good, but may have, issues here and there. So that it doesn't mean that whatever it has to die, because it has some few elements that can be sorted out here and there.
So what needs to change? Because we did had Simon Chelugui say, the CS on Matters Cooperative say that they'll do an analysis before the second launch. Now the bigger launch, where it is going to be bigger and better. So they're doing an analysis. So what needs to be in this analysis report?
You see, that itself is a progress. It shows the curve, is going up. They are trying to learn. Maybe sometimes, for example, they said, number one, they're going to increase what a hustler can borrow. That means they have seen that maybe 500 shilling is not something that can sustain anyone, even, in Kibanda ya Mtani and that kind of stuff. So that's one. Number two, what they have learned, in my view, is that they have also seen maybe weakness in the structure of governance of the Hustler Fund. They have also maybe realized that they need to do more security in terms of, the money how can someone just borrow and maybe disappear with the money and never come back? All those things has to be addressed. I think, and they're also learning, maybe the way Fuliza works, at a better, and there are other also digital lenders. So it's a work in progress. The Hustler Fund is a work in progress. I think we are, as a Hustler Nation, we are excited about it. And it can only be strengthened, no matter how much we talk about it in terms of governance and all that.
And as a hustler nation, do you expect more defaulters now? Because if you allow Kenyans to borrow from 100,000 to 2.5 million, do you expect more defaulters then?
You see, when you now are able to borrow 2.5 million, I think there'll be more checks, there will be more scrutiny in terms of who is accessible and who. Unlike when you are getting 500. Number two,
but then there'll still be defaulters.
Of course, even in a bank there is a defaulter. Even in a normal bank transaction or any other person who borrows money, there will always be a defaulter. But the thing is that it's not limited to the hustler fund. Secondly, you see, once all this budgetary allocation and all this done, and President William Ruto really unleashes his economic plan and his ambitious program to change the economy of this country and make even the people who used to cheat on taxation, all these pay their dues, the economy will be better, and those who default will automatically be less. Unlike now, when we are talking about, we have come from a handshake government where few people were really benefiting at the cost of many people, many Kenyans who even had to close their businesses just because they were told you are bringing to the country fake goods, their things are auctioned. If you go, I come from a region that borders, Somalia, where goods come in and all that. The other day you have seen the Minister for Internal Security in Mandera, in Moyale, and that part, because the President William Ruto is very, he really means business in how the border between our country and the neighboring countries do things. Because we used to see where, in just a multi-agency task force, in the name of multi-agency task force, just comes ban goods, people who have, no one cares about you, So I think, and the presence of the internal security, Kindiki, in Moyale and Mandera, for me signifies how serious the president is in terms of cross-border businesses and also bringing back our economy to life.
Okay.
Yes.
I want us to shift focus, gentlemen and viewer, from Matters Hustler Fund. Okay, it's basically still money and your pocket, basically, to budget making. And I'll start with you, Vyambo, on this. And, yesterday, the supplementary budget for the financial year 2022-2023 has seen a slash of 14 billion Kenyan shillings from the budget. And take a look at its page. This is page of the Daily Nation. I think page 8, page 7, yeah, page 7. You can have that on our screens this particular moment. The whole Kenya Kwanza protested the empty coffers, but then splurged on luxuries. And we do have, the whole list of the numbers there. Approvals granted in supplementary budget. And on the left side, it says, Ruto's office has gets 8 billion Kenyan shillings in supplementary budget. They do have it. You can take a look at all those particular numbers and get to see who is the winner and who is the loser, if we may put it as that. Wakili Othambo, what do these numbers tell you so far? I mean, it is a few months to June where we'll have a new, or rather the next, financial year. But until then, it's going to be a whole wait and see. Government trying to crunch these particular numbers, the whole recurrent expenditure, where the president is looking for whole 300 billion, but then the budget, the National Treasury, cuts up to basically 14 billion up to this point. How do you read into these numbers?
Well, first of all, when it comes to supplementary budgets, the truth of the matter is that there are always winners and losers. Winners and losers in the sense that supplementary budgets afford the opportunity of rationalizing funds. Possibly there are entities that were given more money than they deserve, or there are entities that were given little money than they deserve, and all of these ideally should be informed by practical realities, which include some of the desirable outcomes that are intended under the budget within that financial year, or just generally what we call the MTEF process. MTEF process is just the medium-term expenditure framework, and you start looking at you look at government spending not just in the current financial year, but up to 3 years. Beyond the current financial year. But that aside, one of the biggest concerns that I'm seeing, one of the biggest concerns that I have with some of the things that I'm seeing have been rationalized include the fact that there has been a reduction in the monies that are intended to be spent towards development, and majority of that added to recurrent expenditure. We know what recurrent expenditure is. Recurrent expenditure is all about the monies that are every day used in the running of government in the terms of paying of salaries, meeting some of the operational expenses that generally come with the running of government. But I would not have expected that we take so much from development and send it to recurrent. And in all of this also, I'm seeing some people have gained quite a bit in the form of billions, which have been taken from elsewhere and taken to other offices and things like that.
And actually that you mentioned that, I was getting to that. What informs who gets what, and where is slashed and where is increased?
Normally it is based on priorities and also the belief that if you as an entity is holding on to money that either you can't spend or you cannot, basically not entitled to, and that is part of monies that you can't ideally spend, then it makes absolute sense to take that money and take it to certain areas of the budget, including sectors that in terms of priority would actually generate more economic activity. You spend more, you're able to put more money into the pockets of people and things like that. And one of the areas where people are able to people are able to realize a lot more in the form of monies that come into their pockets would be on the development side of the budget.
Okay.
The development side of the budget is where the government by itself does not really have contractors, for instance, to carry out the activities that government carries out.
Right.
So it relies on third parties to do that, and those third parties would be yourself and myself.
Right.
Yeah, such that when you do the government work, then you're paid for it and things like that. But also in terms of development projects, these are some of those capital expenses that are spent on projects that ultimately bring more in the form of economic performance, revenue collection. It's an investment.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the capital side of the budget, it's essentially an investment. And in terms of these investments, there are returns that come with them compared to recurrent. Recurrent is a bit personal.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you don't have people also gaining from them by way of contracting, but the capital side of the budget is where the economy benefits more in terms of projects that have got profound effect, whether from revenue, consumption, and things like that.
Right.
So for me, the concern is that we were talking about austerity measures. We were talking about making the budget lean and things like that. But I'm still seeing expansions, even in areas where I thought we would be very targeted for purposes of of reductions of allocations, such that therefore the budget is slimmer or trimmer and makes absolute sense. I also do hope that even as we do all of these things, we are not doing the supplementary with the intention of financing some of these proposals by way of borrowing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is a concern for me.
Because of time, briefly, Kedar, the 13th Parliament is resuming on the 14th of February, and top of the agenda, they'll be discussing the whole budget policy statement for 2023-2024 financial year. What should Kenyans be expecting, and what personally do you expect from all this debate?
Okay, before that, from the look of this supplementary budget, looking at it, someone may just view that the office of the president is getting a lot of money, more than it deserves and all that. But if you look at the nitty-gritty, go to the details, there is money in that budget. There's a money meant to settle pending bills of the NMS that was under the office of the president in the previous regime. So I think also sometimes we have sensational news by the media where we need to get our facts right so that the public are properly informed. When you just give through to office gets 8 billion in supplementary budget, it sends a message that's sometimes not entirely correct, because I have read the story properly, and I've seen that there are more to the story than it appears. And some by just getting this or just saying it, a story on the screen, it will really misrepresent. Having said that,
but it's true he's gotten that amount of money.
But you see, that amount of money is under the office of the president. So what goes to to the office of the president exactly as the office of the executive president, and the other entities that were there before, like NMS was never part of the presidency until Sonko was kicked out of City Hall and his functions were taken by and Sakaja has kicked them also out again when he came to power. But I don't have that conversation. Yes.
Because of time,
yes.
Your expectation.
My expectation is that we really need to do an economic recovery. We are coming from a pandemic that has ravaged the economy for the last 3 years. We are talking about droughts, and I come from a region where almost 99%, if I may say, of the animals have been wiped out by famine. People are hungry. Rains failed, I'm sure, and it also failed other parts of the country. But for me, the main issue will be a focus on economic recovery, and so that by the time we are doing the 2024-2025 budget, we can look back and say yes. This government has tried to bring back the economy back to its feet.
Okay, so briefly again, which particular areas should the parliament, focus on?
Agriculture,
the money,
production, value addition, pastoralism. When you read some of the economic reports that come out, pastoralism is a huge economic sector in this country that's never taken serious.
Okay.
According to the 2019 census report, there are 10 million Kenyans with over 10 billion USD worth of livestock.
Okay.
And majority are pastoralists. So if we do value addition, if we enhance Kenya Meat Commission, if the government tries its best, so for me it will be basically value addition, agriculture, economy, and health also. We were also promised the universal health care, and that's very important that it's taken into consideration.
All right. And finally, before I get to your last words, Wakilingo, the Treasury has proposed it will give governors 385 billion, but then they want 425 billion. So how best can devolved units reduce their dependency on National Treasury? Even as we prepare for and we speak about budget making process, and as we wait for the next financial year.
The county governments have been given powers, and they have a way to collect revenue from the county in itself. They need to expand their sources, they need to seal their loopholes, they need to make sure that they become independent by making sure they are the counties in the agricultural areas, but they actually focus more on the production. They look for ways to legislate and to make sure that we have a good environment for their those particular groups in the county government. And so the industries in there should be able to enjoy a good environment for doing business. And so, for example, in Mombasa, they should be able to enjoy that environment, and from that revenue collection, then they will end up being independent from the national government. But also, this report that has been released, that was released yesterday, is just a report that is yet to be implemented.
Okay.
And has to go through Parliament for it to be finalized. And so I believe some of our leaders will be able to look keenly into this, and especially those in the opposition. We should be able to raise some of these issues and to make sure that probably the equation why the recurrent expenditure is higher than the development expenditure. That the president, when he came to power, said that some of the projects started by the previous government would be completed.
Yeah.
And how are we going to complete this? By reducing the amount of debt repayment. Again, we need to relook at that, because we had that there was a commitment to make sure that we are able to pay off our debts, and this will attract, if we're able to do that, this is going to attract our investors. The county governments, back to to that other issue on independence, also can easily approach the international bodies, can easily approach other external governments to actually invest in their counties. How? By making their counties more attractive. Counties which have strong cultures can actually make sure that we have tourists coming straight to those counties, and that increases the source of revenue. And so the county governments can even fully become independent and leave the national expenditure to just the national government, in that we will not again start increasing the taxes. So this country probably is suffering from management, and if we can be accountable to ourselves, then, and even our leaders being accountable to us, then this country has a great future. We have a very bright future.
You can conclude with your final words.
My final words is that Kenya is a great country, and Kenya will become what we want it to become.
Okay.
And the only way to make it become that beautiful country, that that country that enjoys tax haven and enjoys infrastructure and good leadership, is through us speaking against any person who wants to actually take us back to those former years. And so, as Kenyans, let's love on our country. Let's speak against anyone who is against development. Let's speak against corruption. Let's speak against anyone who is not taking us ahead.
Right, Kadar,
as Wakili has said, this is a great country, but the problem we have is mismanagement of our economy, in terms of corruption. If what happens in this country was happening in some of the neighboring countries, they will collapse. Literally, there will be no country, because we still exist despite billions of shillings being stolen every other day. That shows the greatness that's in us, and we can only improve on it. And I hope President William Ruto will deal with this and take this to the next level, way better than where Kibaki has done it before.
Right.
Yes.
And before I let you go, there's a question that I asked you, a gentleman, if you had tapped into the Hustler Fund, but then hamkunipatia jibu.
Oh, Mimi Hustler Fund.
Yeah.
I'm waiting it for that it can also be streamlining with the Sharia compliance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So not yet.
As I said, it has to be a little bit Sharia compliance, but I am 100% for the Hustler Fund. But as far as Ahmed Qadar is concerned, we are waiting it to be compliant with the Sharia.
Right. Okay, your final words, and you might share to us if you have borrowed 500 shillings from the Hustler Fund.
No, I'm yet to do that, but hopefully I shall in the course of time. I do hope that I should be able to tap into the fund and make good use of it, as is stated or as is intended. But the other thing that I would like to say is that, globally things are not very good. If you look at the global economic outlook, things are not very good. Economies are not really performing very well. The levels of inflation are rising across the globe. Kenya is no exception. But while at it, we must also be realistic. We must accept where we stand as a country, the kind of economic issues that are plaguing us or affecting us, and come up with realistic plans that basically deal with the same without necessarily looking ambitious. And I would also call on the president, in terms of the commitment that he made, that we should employ some bit of austerity measures when it comes to the manner in which we implement our budget and just generally allocate our resources, including spending those resources.
All right, thank you very much, Othiambo Akuma, public policy and fiscal decentralization specialist and also a lawyer, and Ahmed Kadar, political analyst, and obviously Elid Ngugi, a lawyer. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. It is much appreciated as we delved into